Hi dear friends. So the recurring themes from GS1, GS2, GS3 for the upcoming Mains 2023 exam. So here it's very important that you should have an idea what are the core themes of this history, culture, geography, society, or political governance, constitution, international relations, or social justice. Or from GS3 it is economy, agriculture, or space, internal security, or this ecology or disaster management. It is very important that you have to go through the very popular themes, and the easiest way of understanding the popular themes in GS123 is of course having a good analysis of the previous year's questions. At least from 2013 to 2022 you can just go through the previous year's papers of GS1, GS2, GS3 and have an idea what are the core areas you have to focus or the themes you have to focus in. Yes, various portions of GS 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's have a discuss on some important themes which you should not miss for 2023 mains. Okay, from GS1, you know that there is heritage and culture, there is modern India freedom struggle, world history part is there, there is geography, there is society. So have an idea some important topics which you should not miss for this exam. Okay, so I will discuss it based on the previous year's front. Okay. I know that you might have covered this. If not, just have a quick revision of these topics that will save you in your final exam. So coming to this Indian heritage and culture, some important topics I would share with you. There is rocket architecture. UPSC on regular intervals frequently they ask on this architecture, and especially there is rocket architecture, there is stone architecture, there is temple architecture, structural temple architecture, different architecture we cover from Indus civilization to modern times. So here rocket architecture, UPSC can ask a question like this: how the ancient philosophy is reflected, how the ancient culture is reflected, how Buddhism, Jainism ideals are reflected, or how this particular what is called artistic senses of these ancient people or early medieval people is reflected from rocket architecture. So it is always nice to cover the salient features of rocket architecture, different classifications of rocket architecture, and how they reflect the ancient India's philosophy or the culture or the ideals and teachings of various heterodox sects, etc. Cover it very well. There was a question UPSC asked on this Pala's contributions to Buddhism. Okay, so it is very nice to cover the contemporary regional kingdoms, dynasties, and their contributions to the culture heritage of India. Okay, there is Palas, Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas. Recently, Ramappa temple was in the news. It is being inscribed into UNESCO heritage list. So Kakatiya dynasty and their contributions to architecture a potential topic. Hoysalas and their contributions to architecture is a potential topic. Okay, Cholas, you remember Cholas, there is installation of the Chengal in the new parliament building and also Ponniyin Selvan movies, etc. So the Cholas or maybe the related kingdoms or maybe the contemporary kingdoms of the imperial Cholas can be asked. Their contributions to art, architecture, or their cultural contacts with Southeast Asia, these are potential topics for this year. Don't miss. Okay. Similar way, there is a question. The question is like role of Persian literary sources. How the literary sources, there can be Persian literary sources or this Arabic literary sources or this Chinese literary sources or this Greek literary sources or indigenous literary sources, how they reflect the culture of India, how they reflect the status of the women, how they reflect these so-called artistic forms or maybe these architectural evolutions of ancient India and early medieval India. So covering these various literary sources, the foreign literary sources and Indian literary sources, how they reflect the cultural ideals of India, that is an important topic to be revised. There is a Gandhara school of art, Greco or this Roman influences over Gandhara school of art. So it is very nice to cover various schools of art. Gandhara, Madura, Amaravati schools of arts are there. Gandhara, Madura, Amaravati schools of arts are there. Of course, you have to cover them. Then next important thing is how these schools of art, how they reflect the religious ideas of the past, how they reflect the so-called artistic or aesthetic ideas of the past. Okay, so covering these Gandhara, Madura, Amaravati schools of art, their foreign influences and indigenous influences, features, and how they reflect the culture, the ideals, that's an important area to be revised. Then of course there is there was a question like a safeguarding Indian heritage. We know that there are lots of initiatives taken by the central government, state governments to bring back the stolen artifacts back from USA or Australia, from different parts of the world. So what are the challenges we face in safeguarding? Yes, this is so-called cultural heritage of India. Okay, so those angles, various challenges, various government initiatives, wherefore for safeguarding the heritage and culture of the nation, that area you have to focus very well. Then that is of course a question. It is about the travelers. UPSC nowadays has started asking lots of questions, which is almost synchronized with the history optional questions. So the sources part is very important. You cover, yes, how the foreigners, for example, the Chinese travelers or Arab travelers or these European travelers, how they draw the picture of Indian society, Indian culture, Indian religions, or Indian cultural exchanges, how they reflect the picture of India's cultural exchanges or India's religion, India's heritage, etc. So you have to cover the foreigners' accounts and how they throw light into the culture, heritage, or the society or the women's status of India or early medieval India. Okay, that you have to cover. There was a topic which is Bhakti Sufi. Bhakti Sufi, you know, that's a recurring theme. Buddhism, Jainism is a recurring theme. Bhakti Sufi movements is a recurring theme. Similar way, modern India, social religious reform movement started by Rajara Mohan Roy. From there onwards, that is a recurring theme. So UPC can ask a question like how they reflected the social life, or maybe how they acted as an umbrella of social change. Okay, so here Bhakti Sufi movements, you cover the popular acharyas of Bhakti Sufi movements and how they contributed to cultural awakening, national awakening, etc. you cover. Okay. There was a question, reasons for the decline of the traditional industries, or maybe the challenges, issues faced by these traditional artisans or traditional these like what is called the artist and all. Okay, or what are the reasons for the decline of these traditional artisanal industries and all. So that's very nice to cover. You know, it's very important. You must know the challenges these traditional, yes, these artisanal industries face or artisans face. What are the initiatives, technological challenges, or maybe economical challenges, or these audience preference challenges. Okay, you cover the various challenges faced by traditional industries, art and craft, etc. and what are the solutions. For example, traditional puppetry. Okay, so how it faces challenges, or maybe how that particular traditional puppetry industries face challenges, what all initiatives or way forward for, you know, is promoting these puppetry industries. Okay, so cover those areas, that's important for you. Then of course the contributions of great leaders or kings of ancient medieval India. For example, Krishna Devaraya, his contributions to art, architecture, literature. Ashoka, his contributions to art, architecture, literature. Samudragupta, his contributions to art, architecture, literature. Kanishka, his contributions to art, architecture, literature. Or this Chola rulers, you know, Rajaraja Chola, Rajendra Chola, contributions to art, architecture, literature. Akbar the Great, contributions to art, architecture, literature. Shivaji the Great, contributions to art, architecture, literature. So it is very nice to cover the very popular rulers of the past and medieval India and how they contributed to art, architecture, literature or its promotion. Okay, that you cover very well. Then of course, UPSC will ask questions which is based on civilizational features, ancient Indian civilizations and how they provided impetus to modern urbanization, modern civilization or modern society, etc. That's a popular question. Then question can be related to these Mesolithic art forms. Mesolithic art forms. So these are some very core areas, you know. The language literature, I would say, Vedic literature, Sangam literature, Maurya literature, Gupta literature, Chola literature, Vijayanagar literature, this Mughal literature, Indo-Islamic or Delhi Sultanate literature. So that part is important here. How these respective rulers or dynasties contributed to growth of language and literature of that particular age, that you have to cover very well. Okay. Then architecturalizer of ancient, medieval, modern. Modern, when I say that the colonial architecture and the post-independent architecture, especially Laurie Baker and all, you cover what are their contributions, what are the salient features of each school of architecture, you cover very well. When you answer it, in the answer, as a value addition, you can just mention this archaeological surveys findings, or maybe whether it is part of UNESCO heritage list, or again the recent like you know excavations or studies, etc., findings, etc. you can add, and examples you can add. Okay, that you take care. So these are some very important topics you have to cover from heritage and culture. Moving on to modern India, modern history, I would say this is very important. The first important part is you must know various reasons for these colonial establishments, or why these Europeans like the British, French, or this Dutch, or this Portuguese, what all the socio-political, economic, cultural factors contributed to yes advent of Europeans, and eventually why this British East India Company established here. Okay, economically, politically, socially, culturally, why they established here. That area you cover very well, especially the socio-political, economic, cultural conditions of this 18th century. You should cover very well. Okay, 18th and 19th century you should cover well. Next important part is colonialism. You know the colonial policies of the British, the reforms of the British, educational reforms are there, civil service reforms are there, or these economic reforms are there, land revenue reforms are there. Okay, socio-cultural reforms are there. So various reforms of this British East India Company, or maybe there are so-called economic policies here, land revenue policies here, and the impacts and implications of their economic policies. That part you have to cover very well, okay? Because it's a recurring thing. So many times UPSC asked in prelims and mains, that is only the impact and implications of this colonial rule. So you cover very well about the reforms, including the constitutional reforms, and their implications on Indian society, culture, economy, and the political structure. Cover very well, okay? There is another recurring theme which is the viceroys and the reforms. For example, I think it was in 2020 they asked on Lord Curzon. Okay, this year you can expect a question, since there are lots of discussions on this Lord Lytton and Lord Ripon. You can get a question like this: a comparative analysis between the constructive destructive policies of this Ripon and Lytton. Okay, you can expect a question. So the viceroys and the reforms, and how they influenced or how their policies largely instrumental for is rise and growth of this Indian nationalism. You see that. So viceroys and the reforms, their policies and their implications, it's an important part you have to cover. And next thing is the ideological basis of Indian nationalism. We know that there are different strands of this Indian nationalism. Cover the basic ideological grounds of Indian nationalism. You could see that there are different ideological bases: moderate, extremist, revolutionary, Gandhian, different strands are there. Cover it, and there is leftist and rightist strands are there. Cover it. So national movement, as far as it is concerned, please take care. What are the ideological bases? What are the different strands? And what are the elements, push and pull factors, which eventually resulted in national awakening, thereby national movement? That you cover very well. It's a favorite area for UPSC. Then of course there is a frequent theme, which is 1857 revolt. You should not miss it. Of course there is a question: British rule and its impact on different social classes. Women is there, labor class is there, middle class is there, ruined zamindars are there, or educated section is there, Indian industrial class is there. So British rule and its impacts on different sections of society, that's a favorite area. Okay. Then role of women, role of students, role of revolutionaries, role of moderates, role of extremists. Different sections, different class of people, cult of people, group of people, and leaders, their contributions in freedom struggle. That's an important area for you. Then another important topic is, of course, the princely states. For this year, princely states and their approach toward the British East India Company, British rule, and princely states and princely state people's movements are important here. How the princely state people's movements different from this mainstream national movement, or why they joined later, what are the problems they faced, and how these rulers of the princely states approached these people's movements, etc. That you cover for this year. It's an important part for this year, okay? Then of course Gandhian phase, as every year you could see that Gandhian phase is important. So Gandhi South African experiences important for this year. His localized movements in India, after his Garvapasi, his localized movements in India, and their causes and their far-reaching, implications or impacts. That's important for you. Then Gandhiji's movements, NCM, versus CDM versus Quit India. Comparative analysis type of questions you can expect this year. Okay, especially this NCM, CDM, Quit India, etc. And Swarajya Party, since the 100 years of the Swarajya Party formation is completed, Swarajya Party, its resolutions, demands, and how they played a crucial role in this India's freedom struggle when this Indian National Congress was in a passive phase. Okay, so Swarajya Party and its resolutions, demands, achievements, and failures you cover very well. A similar way, Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement can be connected with the Atmanirbhar Bharat of today's. Okay, so Swadeshi movement part is very important for you. Their objectives, their achievements, their limitations, their spread, etc. You cover very well. Overall role in this India's national awakening, national movement of Swadeshi. That you cover very well. Then of course there is different voices during national movement, major issues faced by these women during this freedom struggle, or the problems of the women in the 18th, 19th, 20th century, how it is reflected in India's freedom struggle agitation. Those angles you cover very well. Changes after 1857 revolt, the political, economic, social changes after 1857 revolt, important for you. Yes, various facets of economic policies of the British. Then, of course, Royal Indian Navy mutiny, IN agitations, Royal Indian Navy mutiny, their causes and their impacts, significance, etc. important for you. Don't miss it. Okay. Similar way, the constitutional reforms, especially the Government of India Act 1935. You know that there can be a question like this: how eventually it resulted in this Indian independence. So many features of Government of India Act 1935. For example, the provincial autonomy element is there. All India Federation element is there, or let's see bicameral provincial bicameral legislature concept is there, or this class legislature or separate electorate concept is there. Then RBI formation is there, okay, or federal court formation is there. So just focus on, because 1935 Government of India Act is regarded as that formed the structural basis of Indian Constitution. Also, you say what are the limitations of this particular act, how it eventually led to Indian independence. Okay, so that constitutional reforms, especially Government of India Act 1935, is important for you. Moving on to this world history part. So coming to Indian history, I would say freedom struggle part is very crucial for you, and especially let me tell you, modern India, when you cover, focus on the subaltern history, especially from this common people, layman's perspective, various elements and events of the history, that's important for you. Okay. Now coming to world history, UPSC asked a question: the challenges to democratic state system between two world wars. So world wars, and recently so many developments or news related to 1 and 2 which happened, or maybe that is in the movies and all, so many discussions happen. So it's important that World War 1 and 2 and how it impacted the society, that means how it impacted this Europe, how it impacted the entire globe, how the different sections of the society is impacted by that World Wars 1 and 2. That part is important for you. Okay, so cover World War 1 and 2, its causes and implications and impacts on various sections of society and the entire globe. Okay, the economic, polity and state system of the globe, that's important for you. American French Revolutions, again a recurring theme in this world history. American French Revolutions, anti-colonial struggles, colonization, decolonization, the process of colonization, process of decolonization, how it happened in these third world countries, how it impacted third world countries, that's important, especially Asian and African colonies, how impacted by the process of colonization and decolonization, that you cover very well. Next important thing is, of course, Great Economic Depression. Okay, Great Economic Depression. So World War, some important themes are there, let me tell you. Yes, this American Revolution, French Revolution, important for you. Unification of Italy, Germany, important for you. World War 1 and 2, important for you. Okay, then this international organizations, peacemaking organization, League of Nations. Why League of Nations was a League of Nations? Okay, and the reason for the success of United Nations organization, that's important for you. Colonization, decolonization part is important for you, and the factors eventually leading to this turning this bicameral world into bipolar world to unipolar world, that part is important for you. Okay, disintegration of USSR. So these are some regularly asked themes in the history part, world history part, and I would say world history, it's something you just focus on the cause and effect strategy. Okay, you must know the multi-dimensional causes and the impact and implications of various events of world history. Those portions are important for you. Now there is post-independence. I would say that yes, some important things which asked is obviously let me tell you some important themes asked from. In fact, the reality is like a post-independence. Minimal number of questions are asked. Many years, post-independence questions remained absent. Also, if you check the reason, the trend of the last 4 to 5 years, post-independence remained mostly absent. But there are some recurring themes. Especially reorganization of the states or economic reorganization. Then princely states integrations. Okay, all those areas are important for you. There was a question like significance of thoughts of Gandhi in the present time. Similar way, you can expect a question like this. Yes, these ideologies and thoughts of these freedom fighters or the leaders of this British India and these post-independent leaders. Yes, the thoughts, ideologies, and the relevance in modern times. Okay, relevance in modern times. That kind of a question. So the great leaders of this British era and the great leaders of this post-independent era that you cover very well. Their ideas, their ideologies, their thoughts, contributions you cover very well. There was a question like a Bodh and Gramdan movements, objectives of Bodh and Gramdan movements. So there are lots of movements which happen. With reference to that tribal integrations, state integrations. There are lots of like movements which happen. Environmental movements are there. Okay, lots of movements which happened in this post-independent India. Cover the causes and objectives and implications of those movements, which is important for you. Okay. Then there was a question like contributions of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, pre-independent India, post-independent India. So that way, just focus on the major events, movements, and the great leaders and their contributions to pre-independent India, post-independent India. Those areas are important for you. So in the next part, we will discuss the very important society portions and geography portions. Similar way, we will discuss GS2, GS3 also. That's it. Thank you.